Welcome to my channel, The Subconscious Mind and the Solar Plexus, an audiobook by Julia Seton.
There are many ways in which the human mind seeks knowledge, but no matter which way it chooses, in the end it arrives at the final product of its quest, the unfoldment of a harmonious and perfected self. There are many people who seek unfoldment along the lines of scientific inquiry, and many who seek it along the lines of philosophy. And then, again, there are those for whom all of life is simply a system of religion and worship. All these lines of inquiry add their grain of sand to the sum total of wisdom. But often, after these things have been completely exhausted, we find that there are many others latent within the consciousness that have not yet been answered. We are dissatisfied, and whatever we do, the mind remains restless and incomplete in its connections, until it links up with the unfathomable laws of psychology within itself. Science, from its own scientific plane, is wonderful, and fascinates us with its far-reaching laws of material relations. Philosophy, from the plane of philosophy, is also fascinating, and leads us through a labyrinth of more or less intentional conclusions and deductions. But after a while all these conclusions connect us with other lines of consciousness, which reveal but do not interpret. And we discover that after the last words of science, philosophy, and religion have been spoken, there are still levels of mental and spiritual expression that have not been revealed. So, as we contemplate existence from a broader spiritual perspective, we discover that to construct sublime and enduring interpretations, capable of withstanding the test of time, the human mind must approach life, not only from a scientific, philosophical, or religious perspective. However, it is also essential to blend all these facets in a psychological way. This provides humanity with the model of life as an art. We cannot know life as an art until we know and include in our conclusions the action of each phase of human consciousness, both seen and unseen. And then, by a higher scientific and philosophical training, based on a finer psychiatry, the race can come to more comprehensive methods for human progress. And by these methods, eradicate sin, disease, poverty and deprivation of every nature. To know these more subtle laws of relationship, we must understand not only our own being, but the laws of the universe in which we live. The energy that operates the human physical form is a part of the infinite source. It is eternally existent as universal intelligence. This intelligence creates and manifests form in the world, just in the degrees of harmony and power, which the human instrument is tuned to transmit creative spiritual impulses. Unless all states of consciousness, together with their corresponding cellular centers, are correlated in perfect harmony, the thing called life will take a perverted form. Centers of being. Within the human body, there are two distinct centers of higher action. One is linked with the outer world and its laws, and as a faithful servant, is in charge of all our physical manifestation. The other merges with the invisible metaphysical forces of the universe, connecting our human existence with the wisdom that spans the ages, both past and future. One represents the manifestation of revealed life, and the other is the agent of hidden life. Only by enabling ourselves, through training or natural development, to be masters of these two positive centers, and we secure their continued collaboration, do we become masters of our own nature. We emancipate ourselves from the recognized laws of sin, disease, pain and death, and elevate our life towards their common expression of peace, power and divine realization. The first center, and the one concerned with the revealed life of men, is the cerebrospinal and its system of nerves. The physical brain contained in the skull of the physical body is our great personal legislator, and takes its place in the world of research, science, and the intellectual expression of facts. Its sole function is to produce thoughts, and to relate us normally to the changing conditions of daily life. We need to remember that the physical brain is divided into two major divisions, the right lobe and the left lobe. In the left lobe, many of the higher conceptual centers are located. Scientific research has not yet determined all the mysteries of this labyrinth of physical expression. As much as we strive to take psychiatry to the end, neurologists and psychiatrists are continually confronted by new discoveries. Between them, disputes about the actual function and the location of the vital centers of the human brain do not cease. But more and more, they agree that the left brain is the controlling power of all higher human expression, such as memory, imagination, speech, control, and expression. It is known that a tumor in the left prefrontal lobe produces certain symptoms, from which scientists have been able to deduce important clinical precepts. Tumors in the right lobe of the brain have established beyond doubt the fact that the centers of the right lobe are of a lower order or function. As well as that the right brain is practically only the servant of the other half of the brain. Those interested in psychology and metaphysical healing base their research and faith on this fact. The left brain, in its function, seems to be occupied with higher ideations, while the right lobe keeps a close relationship with the physical body and has more to do with cellular equalization or polarization. It is a kind of watchman of the physical body. This statement becomes evident when we observe that in cases of illness or bodily disorder, the right hemisphere does not fulfill some of its functions. So it is necessary to resort to the higher centers to help the body to return to a higher expression. The higher centers are called to the rescue and pour through the right brain and from it to the physical body impulses that produce health and strength. When the brain, through lack of training and lack of power of concentration, loses its power to inhibit conflicting thoughts and diversifies and registers thousands of different ideations, then we become unable to make conscious a perfected impulse. Our whole physical body begins to express depolarization. Another crucial point that contributes to the totality and joins our higher centers in relation to the physical brain is the solar plexus, or the abdominal brain of the physical body. It acts as a great reservoir of universal energy and wisdom. The solar plexus is a large collection of nerve cells and forms the great nerve-generating energy center for the sympathetic nervous system. It is whitish-gray, very fenestrated, quite flattened, and is attached to the second and third sacral nerves. It is located above the middle of the upper border of the pancreas, to the right and left of the ciliaxis, just in front of the margin of the diaphragm. The sympathetic nerves of the thorax and abdomen are fully formed in a fetus, while the brain is only a pulpous mass. It is highly improbable that this is mere chance on the part of nature. The early formation of this system demonstrates, with absolute certainty, the priority of its functions. The body develops and perfects itself. The bone structure is completed, even before the brain or the spinal cord exists. There have been cases of children born without the presence of a physical brain, and the sympathetic system carries out all the work, nourishing and sustaining the body. The absence of the cerebrospinal nerves in the brain prevents normal expression in such cases, because without them, there is no way to register any expression in the outside world. The solar plexus is the home of the ego or spirit of men. It is the connecting link between man and the infinite, and is the meeting place of the divinely physical and the physically divine man. From the solar plexus, we receive those visions which we call faith. When we internalize them in the field of our physical consciousness, and develop them through human scientific reasoning, until they become tangible manifestations, it is then when they become facts. Conscious union of the centers of being. It is not enough to know the function of the cerebrospinal center and the solar plexus brain, we must know how to connect and dominate them. And this we do, through the power of the conscious will. We know the truth, and the truth sets us free. The union and conscious relationship of these centers of being within us give us health, strength, beauty and youth on the physical plane, and open the door for divine revelation to the soul. The prophets and mystics of antiquity always sang to their solar center of divine influence. The Hebrews attribute to the rains, knowledge, joy, pain and pleasure. It is written, God reproves the Jews for having him in the mouth, and not in the rains. The psalmists say, his rains instructed him, for my rains instruct me in the night seasons, thus giving the key to all visions and prophecies. And we know clearly what these men of old were vaguely hinting at, because the rains are simply the center of the solar plexus of the body. We are all familiar with the umbilical cord of the newborn. It is the cord between a child and its supply while it is in its developmental stages. This cord on the outer plane stands simply as a symbol of the other subjective cord, as above so below. Those capable of perceiving the subtler etheric bodies will observe without difficulty an etheric cord extending from each individual, connecting him with the more delicate currents of the universe. This cord is always present, as long as one resides on this plane of existence, and as long as it is not disconnected, it allows the possibility of reviving those who appear to be lifeless. By this cord, in and out continuously, through the rains or solar plexus, the impulses we call life. All sight, hearing, feeling and emotion, all subjective sensations, are the product of the activity of these currents, which act upon the brain and the nerves of the solar plexus. And through these, on the brain and the physical nerves. There is only one sense, but the physical centers differentiated into touch, sight, vision, taste and smell. Sound comes to us through the solar center, and the nervous systems register it, in the localized auditory centers. There are individuals so developed, that they can hear with other parts of their body, as well as with their ears. The ears, with their fine nervous disposition, are used simply to correlate sound, and prevent the expansion of the tone. Sight is the same. When one is sufficiently alive in his solar center, he has clairvoyance and cosmovision, he can see through space. People have been known to tell what was happening in different cities, seeing as clearly as if they were there. Optical centers are only fine arrangements of nerves, by which one can correlate and localize his vision, for objective physical use. And when he knows the finer relation of being, he projects and expands his vision, or diminishes it at will. What the race calls the energy of love, is located in the solar plexus. Any disappointment in love, reacts on the body, through the exaggerated functions of the solar plexus center, and the sympathetic nervous system. It is enough to remember the rapid falls, which follow a great disappointment. Heart disease and rapid absorption, are well-known expressions. All the sympathetic centers, are so closely attuned, that heart disease, heart failure, angina pectoris, and all subjective cardiac symptoms, are the product of abnormal solar functioning. And through the cardiac centers, the heart responds, and the mind and emotions of the individual, set the abnormal vibratory law. It is well known to all mystics, that kidney problems of all kinds, are the physical response, to abnormal sensory stimulus or expression, such as excess sympathy, love, passion, drink or repression. It is often the result, of carrying a secret for years. Psychic repression of all kinds, causes abnormal kidney function. And this is not difficult to explain, when it is remembered, that the adrenal capsules of the kidneys, are supplied in a wonderful way, by the sympathetic nerves. Scientists themselves, say that the branches of these plexuses, are remarkable for their great size, compared with the organ they supply. Neurasthenia, the great American disorder, is simply, overactivity of the cerebrospinal system, of nerves and physical centers of the brain. Psychasthenia is the result, of overactivity of the solar plexus brain, produced by the loss of control, of the thought centers of the physical brain, allowing feeling to overexcite the solar plexus brain. This leads to a saturation of this center, flooding the system with an excess of electroradiant energy, which the physical cellular centers cannot manage. Both diseases will be cured when doctors and patients learn the true relationships of the centers of mind and body, and establish a true physical and psychic relationship, through thought and breath, without letting the system be driven by a wild explosion of electrical force. Constipation is another American disease, and its cause and cure are in the solar center. There is no longer any excuse for continuing with this limitation, if we are to follow the law of our own being, and vitalize and electrify our body. In an ordinary individual, the solar center is constantly nourished by an uninterrupted stream of energy. This energy flows from the outside, entering through the solar cord, as a receptive or negative breath, and passes through the lungs, as a creative and positive breath. This energy passes to the solar plexus, through etheric waves coming from the sun. And from there, through the nerves of the solar ganglion, to the external nervous system of the spinal cord, then to the pineal gland and then to the brain. The pineal gland is the central point of the human brain, where this energy is located or controlled, and sent as needed, to the call of the physical cells. It is always passing in sufficient quantity, to energize, vitalize and etherize the flesh, when the relationship is normal. But when it is broken, through diseases of the mind, and lack of correlation of the centers of being, the control is lost, the regulating power ceases, and a vicious circle takes place. A sick nervous system is the result. The pineal gland is the reservoir that stores the vital energy for the physical supply. Each cell of the body has its own normal amount stored inside, so that depletion and supply are equal in a perfect body. The solar center is controlled, excited or stilled, by the natural law of breathing through the lungs, and by the thought control of the mind. It is necessary to master proper breathing before a continuous polarization of these psychic centers can be maintained. The great muscle of respiration is the diaphragm, and in the descent and release of the diaphragm, there is a control over the circulation of the brain, of the solar plexus. An increased determination of blood to any center excites its function, as well as a decrease reduces it. Therefore, having total control over breathing and circulation, from the brain to the solar plexus, we can manipulate them according to our will, either by increasing or decreasing their activity. In many cases of pulmonary hemorrhage, this natural law of control of all sympathetic functioning, through the compression of the solar center, caused by the forced descent of the diaphragm, has stopped hemorrhages that were previously uncontrollable. The slow, deep breaths relieve internal congestion, and draw blood from the superficial vessels. And through the thoracic portion of the sympathetic cord, control of the pulmonary vessels occurs. Slow, deep breaths change our vibrations, increasing the molecular activity of our physical cells. In many people, the solar plexus is inert, pale, bloodless, and is not able to attract through itself the necessary amount of vibratory ether. When we massage the solar plexus through the breath, we increase the determination of the blood to that center. And with this increased molecular activity, there begins to be a greater influx of energy, and the whole body soon begins to respond with new life. With this influx of energy, the cells of the physical body again release the latent force within. And as it is transmitted in radiations from the physical cells of the body, which in turn demand a new supply, the pineal gland becomes excited again, in its normal action of supplying the demand. The centers of the physical and cerebral body find their functional balance, restoring the proper internal and external cycle of psychophysical activity, which leads to the well-being of the individual. The immense creative energy of the universe flows constantly through us, like a current that follows its course. This flow of the subtlest etheric currents is used to build, rebuild and vitalize both the body and the mind. Then, it returns from the physical body, in the form of lines of electrical force, shaping what we know as the human aura. Those who actively emanate this energy are called magnetic and attractive. When one is sick, the aura lacks magnetic or attractive power. The great secret of human life is to have a magnetic self, and to consciously maintain the right relationship between these two centers of being. It is not enough to simply exist, and be carried away by a confused state of emotions. To be the master of our own realm, the human being must exercise mastery over himself. And only through understanding can we advance in this conscious mastery. From the subjective solar side of consciousness, we receive all God-born impulses, which manifest as human aspiration and revelation. And through the external brain consciousness, we can emit the divine expression of a divinely enlightened mind. The great wisdom of the ages is recorded in the cosmic mind, and is ever beating upon us, through our solar center. We are children of the sun, and in its converging rays, we walk, live and have being. When we carefully tune our human mind, aligning it with the subtler rays of a universal mind, our collective consciousness becomes a powerful receiving station. Through it, we can pick up cosmic messages, and in this way, illuminate our daily lives, and strengthen our physical health. Eventually, we come to vibrate in such a high universal intelligence, that by the natural law of atomic attraction, we build a physical body of such a vibrant substance, that it becomes indestructible. Thus, we enter into a new human experience, facilitated by our deeper understanding. When we know the true psychology of the self, we unite all the various currents of the human brain and its centers of ideas, with the unified current of power, which comes to us from within the solar centers. Then the physical and the metaphysical are one, we pass from the part of the law of life, to the whole. We are lords of the physical, lords of the mental, lords of the spiritual, and lords indeed of all this lower realm, and our human life is linked to its source. The subconscious mind. So much has been written about the subconscious mind, its use and its power, that the student must wander in a maze of uncertainty and confusion, unless he can be brought back to the straight path of inquiry. The time has come for a higher revelation on this subject, and today there are those who know more clearly the great truths, which the early psychologists only vaguely foreshadowed. It is the task of the mystics of the 20th century to offer a clearer interpretation than has hitherto been given. The early psychologists taught that man possessed an objective side of consciousness, and that the subjective side was endowed with greater power than the objective. But they shed little light on what these two states of consciousness meant. From these earlier teachings, there has evolved the practice in the new thought world of rubbing shoulders with one subjective mind, instead of entering into union with the one mind. We were told that suggestion to our subconscious mind would produce in us certain well-defined experiences. So, while the old thought world prayed to its Jesus, the new thought world suggested to its subconsciousness. To those who strive to understand scientifically the subtler forces of life, it is evident that finely delineated laws operate. We cannot go too far into the investigation without discovering that within us there are numerous states of consciousness with which the average individual is not at all familiar. In following this trail, we come face to face with the fundamentals of the universal mind. Psychologists today see only one substance, and find that this substance is made up of minute atoms, each atom possessing its own intelligence, or atomic mind. Man is the highest point of localized atoms, and he and his environment become a well-marked center of activity within the larger universal world mind. The human physical body is only a combination of atoms, tuned to move at its own vibratory rate. The outer substance is merely a shell, composed of separate points of intelligence. The mind is always enveloped in the body, and the undifferentiated, central atomic stream of intelligence within us is known as our spirit. Meanwhile, the outer layers of this differentiated substance are what we call the body, but in reality they are only one substance. There must always be the outer and inner action of each law, so there is no such thing as a body and a spirit, there is only the outer and inner action of the universal mind. Our physical body at the cellular level is a layer of atomic intelligence. It is equipped with a brain, nerve centers and a system of nerves, through which the spirit or higher intelligence can act. Within this physical body, there is another body, made of a much finer and vibrant substance. And within this finer or second body, there is a third body of even finer substance, and so on. Each body in turn contains another body, reaching up to the seventh dimension. People in their ordinary consciousness are familiar with 3 of these bodies. The others belong to the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th dimensions of consciousness, and only a few on this planet are awake in these states of vibration. Each body is endowed with its centers of expression, and these centers correlate with the brain and the nerve centers of the physical body. And when the physical body is polarized and functioning normally, it receives, sends, is vitalized and sustained by the energy of the finer etheric intelligence from its inner bodies. These bodies, combined with the cellular intelligence, are united into one by the central intelligence within them, or the one mind. Each body is distinct in itself, but no one can say, here begins one, or here ends another, because they intermingle like water among grains of sand. The atoms of each body are held in suspension within the fluidic substance of the other bodies. These bodies can be consciously separated and expelled by those who understand the law. Each one of them possesses a specific power in the plane that corresponds to it. When we learn to manipulate the physical body and its cellular consciousness through the consciousness of the other bodies, we generate a dynamic of life within the physical body, which escapes the comprehension of those who only work with the intelligence of the physical consciousness. These bodies are centralized and held together at a point in the solar plexus on the physical side. What the ancient psychologists affectionately called the subconscious mind is but the second inner body, and the state of consciousness that accompanies it. This body is called by those who call it the psychic self. When one can function in this part of his consciousness, and has become familiar with this self, he is more powerful in his physical body. Suggestions directed to the subconscious mind are of great value, for they vitalize the activity of the psychic mind and body, allowing its power to manifest more easily through the physical self. In so doing, the student suspends, to some extent, the operation of his lower state of consciousness, or his objective physical mind, giving a more definite expression to his finer forces. The psychic body manifests through the centers of the physical brain. The solar plexus, with the higher concept centers of the physical brain, acts as the switchboard, where the connection for consciousness is made, keeps all the force intact. All the diseases of the world, except accidental wounds, fractures and septic infection, are only the discordant association between the physical body, its centers, and its component bodies. When this refraction occurs, the ego cannot register its finer intelligence. Then the physical body becomes the plaything of its own cellular intelligence, made more discordant by the spasmodic registrations of the higher mind. It is known that behind all the well-known conditions, such as nervous prostration, temporary insanity, nervous disorders, such as psychasthenia, neurasthenia, neuralgia, heart problems with mental symptoms, morbid presentiments and despondency, mania and goiter, it hides the abnormal activity of the psychic body, separating the physical body from the natural influx of power. There are 2 ways through which dissociation occurs. One is through the objective mind, with negative and destructive thoughts, and the other through the emotions, indulging in negative and inharmonious feelings. Our thoughts are the things that make our physical body vibrate, and our emotions are the things that make our psychic body vibrate. The character of the emotion will depend on the thought, and a psychic feeling that is too intense will depolarize our flesh. When the connection between the psychic self and the physical self is disturbed, the conscious suggestion to the subconscious is simply to choose a good thought, which restores the vibratory law between psychic and physical centers. The key is conscious and constructive mental activity, aimed at provoking a harmonious reaction. By speaking to our sub-self or subconscious, we address only our objective consciousness, preparing our cellular intelligence to receive the psychic message. By suspending the action of our own objective mind, and sending thoughts and feelings directly to the idea centers of our sub-self or psychic self, we connect both bodies. The psychic mind energizes our physical cells, which respond accordingly. Suggestion to the submind is simply the act of completely suspending our everyday thinking, thus allowing the ego or spirit the opportunity to express itself and register, through our solar plexus, in our objective mind and physical body, the higher vibratory power. Then, when we return to common thought, we find our human mind illuminated with a glory that is not its own, and we come, after a time, to trust to the utmost in our human convictions. For with the contact of our finer states of consciousness, to which we can pass at will, we feel that our own consciousness is consecrated to God. When we know and master the laws of our physical self, we live in our body as a king, feeling conquerors on the physical plane. But by discovering our psychic self, mastering its laws, and channeling its power through the physical body, empowering our own natural physical and mental power, we rise even higher, and are ready to exclaim, "Now be." When we are able to link these two states of consciousness at will, we can access the superconscious self, and the higher dimensions that await. We feel a full connection with our other selves, channeling all our energy, through the psychic and physical body. Thus, we allow the energy of our inner selves to influence our physical environment. In this state, we are aware of our power, and we speak with authority. Before, in making suggestions, to what we called our subconscious mind, we were novices in wisdom. We were trying to hold thought all the time, trying to guide the psychic self, when in reality, we just needed to give it the opportunity. Now, in this new understanding, we allow thought to guide us. We suspend our discordant mental currents, until they align with the finer states of consciousness, within our being. We become not only the sustainer, but also the sustained. With this knowledge, we no longer divide our consciousness. Instead, we learn to relate, with all our atomic consciousness in a normal way, unifying it with our ego, or our own higher constructive mind. Through this ego and its physical solar center, we establish direct contact with the universal mind. Then, intelligence flows, through all states of consciousness within us, and our life becomes imbued with a newfound power. He realizes that illness is nothing but harmonious vibrations, which he is registering within his cellular sense, and he stops his tense and ordinary mind, and finds another state of consciousness. Before ascending to the higher dimensions of being, it is required to master concentration, the ability to stop thinking at will, and focus the mind on the desired, for as long as you choose. He realizes that his environment and his body share the same thought substance, possessing the same psychic force and intelligence. By thinking in harmony, and emitting rhythmic vibrations from your mind, you allow subtle energy to permeate and manifest every physical atom. Soon, his body and his environment are clothed with atoms in accordance with the higher intelligence, with which he is in tune. Man is a complete being, who has evolved through multiple ages and realms. Within him, there reside aspects derived from each plane of his evolution, as well as latent centers, which connect him with those, from which he has yet to evolve. As he traverses the various dimensions of being, the lower centers of activity wither away due to disuse. While, simultaneously, he experiences the awakening of new and unknown powers, as he approaches the latent dimensions of consciousness that must express themselves. When a man approaches higher experiences, in universal intelligence, he perceives the faint affirmation of his psychic self, and experiences new and unexplored sensations, in his solar plexus center. From this vague understanding, past generations have projected the first lessons for their development, known as the subconscious mind. Man is a magnet, and cannot help but feel that he is being touched by the magnetic, ethereal, radiant and celestial currents of the universe, which flow through him, as current does along a wire. By responding harmoniously to these forces, he expands into deeper levels of understanding. The subconscious mind and the play of suggestion have helped many on their way to fuller harmony. But the understanding of the psychic self and its power will lead the race to a world of freedom so great that it can become unlimited in its everyday world. The common mind of man can be enlightened here and now, through conscious contact with the wider dimensions of consciousness within himself. When he enters into union with this law, he transcends the dimensions of the common and subconscious mind, and swings into an orbit of extended power, which is limited only by his own realizations. Directions to unite the objective mind and the solar center. The point of union, between the physical body and the psychic body, is the solar plexus. The central point where the connection is made, are the idea centers of the objective mind. The first step in the correlation is to control the centers of ideas. To achieve calmness in thought. Our thoughts are the things with which we emit vibrations in our body, which produce harmonious or inharmonious emotions. As we think, so we feel, and if these thoughts are harmonious, we respond constructively. If they are inharmonious, then destructive changes begin within our body. Remember, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Get a beautiful vibration of constructive thought. Then begin the inhalation, long deep physical breaths, inhaling through the nostrils, and exhaling through the mouth. During each breath, hold the thought of love, peace, health, joy, fulfillment, and enlightenment, whatever you desire. But always choosing the thought, which will awaken within your physical body, the finer and higher impulses. With each breath, realize that you are actually drawing from an inexhaustible supply, the energy that will express itself for you, in the things you desire. Feel entering your body, through your solar center, the great ray of infinite creative energy that you, in your higher understanding, are simply separating into form, for your immediate needs. After a few moments of concentration, breathing and meditation, take a long deep breath, and exhale slowly. Repeat this over and over again, until you can feel a growing respiratory sensation. Then, keeping the breath without exhaling, forcibly raise and lower the diaphragmatic muscle. Repeat it 5 to 20 times, releasing the breath, as soon as the exercise becomes effort, and breathing in again. Remember that there should be a period, in which you do not breathe at all. We simply let the great breath, breathe through us. First, think harmoniously and breathe consciously. Second, breathe deeply, holding each breath as long as possible, then release, and wait as long as possible, before inhaling again. Third, inhale, holding the breath, and massage the solar center with the diaphragm, then release, and resume ordinary breathing. Massaging the solar plexus through this breath, gives an increase of blood circulation to the solar center, and this increases its pulling power. With a full current of psychic energy, flowing from the outside, a full current of power, is released by the cells of the solar plexus itself. This electroradiantic energy, flows over the sympathetic nerves, and is transmitted to the cerebrospinal nerves and centers, and a warm glow, begins to permeate the physical flesh. The psychic body is then inhaling its normal ether, and the physical body is inhaling its own. This causes the scientific union, between the two bodies. The physical body, demands this re-intensification of the psychic ether, as a flower demands streams of rain and dew. The psychic body, demands this influx of heavier energy, as the high current demands the wire to isolate, centralize and bring forth its power. If the carnal body is devitalized, the current ceases. If the current becomes too intense, it electrocutes the body, driving it hour after hour, in a wild explosion of psychic energy. The functions of the subconscious mind, the psychic self, are memory, feeling, intuition, revelation, clairvoyance, clairaudience and clairvoyance. All the subjective states of the mind belong to this body, and a perfect polarization must be maintained between it and the physical body. Otherwise its functions become sluggish, dull and finally cease, or run amok as in mania, insanity, etc. Which leave the individual as a devitalized plaything of his own subjective senses. The functions of the objective mind and body are attention, impressions, registration, expression and control, with harmonious expression of all subjective sensations. Separated from its normal electrical action, by the influx of the finer psychic energy, the physical body becomes clogged, morbid in secretion and excretion, dull to receive impressions, and totally incapable of carrying out a psychic command. The conscious command of the psychic functions, by concentration of the mind and the use of the solar plexus, has been the method of the seer from time immemorial. And the power to make the body obey thought and feeling is the possession of all normal minds. The understanding of these bodies and vital centers, and the control of these centers, is giving us a manifestation of power, almost supernatural. These exercises should be done at least twice a day, every morning just after rising, and every evening just before retiring. The reaction will be instantaneous. Immediately, an increase of finer electrical energy will pass into the body, and this manipulated, controlled and distributed energy will pass the ordinary individual into the possessions of the Superman. The solar plexus is the center of man's universe, and through it, he is one with all things. This is the single eye. So take heed, then, that thine eye be single, for if thine eye be single, thy whole body will be full of light.
As you conclude this transformative journey through the realms of the subconscious mind and the solar plexus, may you carry with you the wisdom and insights garnered along the way. Remember, the power to shape your reality lies within you. May you continue to explore, grow and thrive on your path to self-discovery. Farewell, and may your journey be filled with boundless possibilities and endless wonder.